Dear you. Yeah, I get it. That makes sense. Sure, whatever works. Those were the kinds of responses you heard most often. Polite, quick, smooth enough to move the conversation forward. And every time someone said them, you nodded, smiled lightly, and continued on as if that was enough. But inside, something didn't land. You had spoken, yet it felt like your words passed through the room without settling anywhere. You noticed it happening again and again. You explained how you felt, carefully choosing words so you wouldn't sound dramatic or difficult. You shared thoughts in a measured way, hoping clarity would help. And while people listened, it felt like they were listening past you, not to you, as if your meaning skimmed the surface but never reached depth. You weren't asking for agreement. You weren't asking for solutions. You just wanted to feel understood. And when that understanding didn't come, you questioned yourself instead. Maybe you weren't explaining it right. Maybe you were being too subtle. Maybe you should simplify. Maybe you should stop trying altogether. You adjusted your tone. You shortened your sentences. You softened your edges. You learned how to communicate in ways that kept things smooth, even if they didn't feel true. What made it harder was that no one was obviously dismissing you. There was no outright rejection. No one told you to stop talking. That's why it felt so isolating. You couldn't point to a single moment and say, "This is where I wasn't heard." It was a collection of small interactions that left you feeling slightly invisible each time. You started holding back. You chose your words more carefully. You shared less of what actually mattered. Over time, you noticed a subtle shift. Conversations became safer, but emptier. You spoke to maintain connection, not to express yourself. You contributed without revealing too much, and slowly, you began to feel like you were editing yourself in real time, hoping the edited version would be easier to receive. You didn't stop caring. You didn't stop thinking deeply. You just stopped expecting to be met where you were. There were moments when you wanted someone to pause and say, "Tell me more. I want to understand." Moments when you wanted your words to be held, not just acknowledged. But when those moments didn't come, you told yourself it wasn't worth the effort to keep reaching. If you're reading this and feeling a quiet recognition, it's because many people experience this kind of loneliness. Not the loneliness of being alone, but the loneliness of being present and still feeling unseen. It happens when you speak sincerely, but don't feel received. And over time, that can make even the most expressive person go quiet. You weren't imagining it. You weren't asking for too much. You were responding to the absence of real listening. Being unheard feels like sending letters into the wind. You write carefully. You seal them with intention. You release them, hoping they'll arrive somewhere meaningful. But instead of receiving a reply, you're left wondering if they ever landed at all. Your past self understands now why this felt so heavy. Communication isn't just about words, it's about resonance. It's about feeling that your inner world reached another person intact. And when that doesn't happen consistently, it creates doubt. Not just about the conversation, but about yourself. You began to ask quiet questions. Am I too much? Am I not clear enough? Is what I'm saying even important? These questions didn't come from insecurity alone. They came from repeated experiences of speaking without feeling mirrored back. And when that pattern continues, it teaches you to lower expectations, to accept surface-level acknowledgement as the norm, to stop hoping for depth. Your past self sees now that part of this experience was contextual. Not every environment knows how to listen. Not every relationship has space for nuance. Some people are focused on responding rather than understanding. Others are distracted, overwhelmed, or uncomfortable with emotional depth. That doesn't make them bad, but it does affect how heard you feel around them. You weren't failing to communicate. You were communicating in spaces that weren't designed for listening. You also learned to value harmony. You didn't want to slow things down. You didn't want to be the reason a conversation became heavy. So you adapted your expression to fit what felt acceptable. Over time, that adaptation became habit. And habits, once formed, shape identity. The cost of being unheard isn't immediate. It accumulates. You start feeling disconnected from your own voice. You hesitate before sharing. You second-guess your instincts. And eventually, you may stop speaking up. Not because you have nothing to say, but because it feels safer to stay quiet. Your past self understands now that being unheard doesn't mean you're unclear. It means there's a mismatch between what you're offering and what the space can receive. And mismatches aren't solved by shrinking. They're solved by discernment, by choosing where and with whom you share your truth. Once you understand this, the self-blame softens. You stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start asking, "Where do I feel safe enough to be fully heard?" That shift is subtle, but it changes everything. Pause for a moment. Take a slow breath. Let your shoulders drop just a little. You deserve to be heard, not because your thoughts are perfect, but because they are yours. You don't need to perform clarity to earn attention. You don't need to compress your feelings into palatable pieces. You don't need to translate yourself endlessly for others to take you seriously. Being heard begins with honoring your own voice, with noticing when you silence yourself out of habit, with recognizing when you're editing before you even speak. These patterns were learned for protection, but they don't have to define your future. You are allowed to speak fully. You are allowed to take up conversational space. You are allowed to say things that don't land perfectly. Not every response will be what you hope for. Some people won't understand. Some won't know how to listen deeply. That doesn't invalidate your expression. It simply clarifies where depth is possible and where it isn't. There are people and spaces where your words will feel welcome, where curiosity replaces dismissal, where listening feels active and generous. And you don't need to find all of them at once. Even one moment of being truly heard can begin to heal the silence you've been carrying. Start small. Notice when you want to speak and don't. Notice what you hold back. Notice where you feel most yourself in conversation. These observations aren't judgments, they're guides. If you're reading this and thinking, "This feels like me," it's because this experience is shared by many who think deeply and feel sincerely. And there is relief in knowing you're not alone in it. You're not strange for wanting understanding. You're not demanding for wanting to be met with presence. You don't need to shout to be heard. You don't need to explain yourself endlessly. You don't need to disappear to keep things comfortable. Your voice matters. And when you begin to treat it that way, you naturally gravitate toward environments that do the same. Take another breath. Let it steady you. You are allowed to trust that your words deserve space. You are allowed to seek connection where listening is mutual. And you are allowed to walk away from conversations that require you to shrink. Being heard isn't about forcing attention. It's about finding resonance. And resonance begins when you believe quietly, firmly, that what you have to say is worth hearing. Sincerely, you.